hath said in his heart, There is no God. They are corrupt. They have done abominable works. There is none that doeth good. Psalm 14:1 is clearly false. Millions of atheists do good deeds every day. So let's dispense with the slander of religionists and look at some facts. In a 2009 study by Phil Zuckerman, published in Sociology Compass, called Atheism, Secularity, and Well-Being, How the Findings of Social Science Counter Negative Stereotypes and Assumptions, Zuckerman says, if religion, prayer, or God belief hindered criminal behavior, and secularity or atheism fostered lawlessness, we would expect to find the most religious nations having the lowest murder rates, and the least religious nations having the highest. But we find just the opposite. Murder rates are actually lower in more secular nations, and higher in more religious nations, where belief in God is deep and widespread. And within America, the states with the highest murder rates tend to be highly religious, such as Louisiana and Alabama. But the states with the lowest murder rates tend to be among the least religious in the country, such as Vermont and Oregon. Furthermore, although there are some notable exceptions, rates of most violent crimes tend to be lower in the less religious states and higher in the most religious states. Finally, of the top 50 safest cities in the world, nearly all are in relatively non-religious countries. And of the 8 cities within the United States that make the safest city list, nearly all are located in the least religious regions of the country. Zuckerman also cites a 1999 Barna study which finds that atheists and agnostics have lower divorce rates than religious Americans. And Zuckerman cites another study by Brinkerhoff and colleagues, which found that conservative Christian women experienced higher rates of domestic violence than non-affiliated women. Rosenbaum found that teenagers who take religion-inspired virginity pledges are just as likely to engage in premarital sex as teenagers who don't take such pledges, but it is the non-pledges who are more likely to protect themselves from pregnancy and disease when they have sex, which helps explain why STD infection rates and teen pregnancy rates are lower in more secular nations compared to more religious nations. The most secular nations in the world fare markedly better than the more religious on standard measures of societal well-being. The most secular democracies in the world score very high on international indexes of happiness and well-being, and they have among the lowest violent crime and homicide rates. But there's more. A perusal of any recent United Nations World Development Report reveals that when it comes to such things as life expectancy, infant mortality, economic equality, economic competitiveness, healthcare, standard of living, and education, it's the most secular democracies on earth that fare the best, doing much better than the most religious nations in the world. Secularism also correlates with higher education levels. Zuckerman cited numerous studies which show that non-believers are less likely to be dogmatic, nationalistic, racist, anti-Semitic, ethnocentric, and authoritarian than their religious counterparts. Atheists and other secular people are also much more likely to support gender equality, women's rights, and gay and lesbian rights. And religious people are much more likely to support government use of torture. According to the Pew Research Center's 2012 aggregated data, 2.4% of American adults say they are atheists when asked. Yet according to 2013 statistical data from the Federal Bureau of Prisons regarding the frequency of religious affiliation, self-identified atheists make up only 0.07% of the prison population. When we compare the 2012 Pew data to the 2013 prison data, we see that atheists in prison are underrepresented by more than 34 times less than in the general population. And considering that the number of self-identified atheists has grown by 0.16% on average each year from 2007 to 2012, according to Pew, it's likely that this disparity is even more pronounced than we know. In a study called With God on My Side, the paradoxical relationship between religious belief and criminality among hardcore street offenders, researchers interviewed active street offenders, many of whom held strong religious convictions. The hardcore offenders we interviewed are able to exploit the absolvatory tenets of religious doctrine, neutralizing their fear of death to not only allow but encourage offending. For instance, one thief, whose street name is Young Stunna, explained that Jesus would forgive him of his crimes, and he'd still go to heaven because he has a decent heart, and that Jesus knows he's stuck in the hood and just doing what he has to do to survive. And finally, Barna, Pew, and other polling organizations have shown that while secularism is on the rise in the U.S., overall, crime is not. So, despite this smear campaign launched by the religious against unbelievers, to the contrary, the weight of most data seems to indicate that religiosity is a poor indicator of social health or personal virtue. But if you continue to deny the evidence and cling to the lies scribbled in some ancient propaganda pamphlet,
error, 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 error.